Well, let's get started if you don't mind. Good evening and welcome to our second Meet the Author for 2026. I'm Rick Meredith and I'm still the president. We don't know for how much longer though. And we have a real treat tonight with Jim to discuss his latest books. It's an excellent read and all the critics have agreed with that. So I have to announce though, it's been a sad few weeks for Capital Crimes. We lost one of our best. Pat Canterbury died on January 27th. She was a founder of Capital Crimes and a friend and mentor to so many. And we'll have a special tribute in our next newsletter. So if you have any stories about Pat, please email them to us at capitalcrimes@gmail.com. Pat will be missed, but never forgotten. Add some people here in the room. Before I introduce our intrepid interviewer, Myra Jolivet, let me run down some of the upcoming events we've got going on. On February 21st, members meeting is a sidebar with Terrence Dwyer. He'll answer legal questions about writing and publishing. And if you haven't already submitted questions to Terrence, please do so by tomorrow. We're getting them to him in advance. And let's see, I'm trying to add more people here, so I'm sorry. Then on March 8th, our in-person crime time will be at the Pleasant Pheasant in Woodland. March 28th, our speaker for the members meeting is Catherine Ramsland discussing forensic psychology. And February 26th through March 1st is Left Coast Crime in San Francisco. And we will be well represented with 41 members on panels and 8 nominees for lefties. For the lefties, we have Diane Schaefer and Lefty Debut nominee for Mortal Zin. Lefty Best nominees, Claire Booth for Throwing Shadows, and James Latoile for River of Lies. Oh, back-to-back Meet the Authors. How about that? Lefty Historical nominee is Clara Johnson with City Lights. And man, we ran the table on Lefty Humorous nominees. We've got Jennifer Chow with Star-Crossed Egg Tarts, Elizabeth Crowens with Bye Bye Blackbird, Katrina McPherson with Scott's Eggs, and Cindy Sample with All's Fair in Love and Murder. And our very own Robin Bursell is the guest of honor. So big things are happening at Capital Crimes. A couple of housekeeping items. If you have a question for Jim, please put it in the chat and Chris and Karen will interrogate Jim during the Q&A. And also turn off your video and audio to save a little bandwidth because we've got a lot of people on today. We will have Jim's interview on our YouTube channel in about a week if you want a refresher. And with that, now it is my pleasure to introduce our own Creole queen, Myra Jolivet, who will then introduce Jim. Myra began as a TV anchor and reporter. She filed early reports on the Space Shuttle Challenger tragedy for CBS Evening News. She also created Emmy Award-winning special investigations and covered true crime. She represented big oil, politicians, and nonprofits as a communication strategist and spokesperson. Myra eventually decided to blend those experiences into her love of traditional mysteries. Her amateur sleuths are California natives with unique and humorous Louisiana Creole roots. Myra is on the board of Capital Crimes and serves on the DEIJB Committee of National Sisters in Crime. And with that, Myra, the floor.
Oh, you want me to introduce Jim? I thought you were going to do it.
I thought you were.
Okay.
I can do it.
Yeah, go ahead. Go for it.
Okay, James Latoile uses his 29 years behind bars as influence in his award-winning novels, short stories, and screenplays. He is a former associate warden in a maximum security prison, a hostage negotiator, and director of California's state parole system. His novels have been shortlisted or awarded for the Lefty, Anthony, Silver Falchion, McCavity, and the Public Safety Writers Award. Illusion of Truth and Sins of Our Fathers are the most recent novels. Look for When Darkness Falls coming in 2026. Jim also serves as the Executive Vice President of Mystery Writers of America. And you can find out more about Jim at www.jameslatoile.com. And I'll put some things on the chat of contact information for Jim. Okay, then now can I turn it over to you, Myra?
Yep, absolutely. And so now let's visit with Jim. Now here's something I don't say every day. Jim, tell us about when you were in prison and specifically prison dorms and racing pigeons.
Prison dorms and racing pigeons. Yeah. So I had kind of an unusual upbringing as a kid. I actually grew up in prison. When I was a kid, My dad moved all over the state. He was a career corrections guy. And one of the places that one of my earliest childhood memories is, picking him up after his graveyard shift at San Quentin. He was the death row sergeant, and Mom would go to pick him up. And that Gothic tower that you see at San Quentin facing the bay there, it's just kind of etched in my memory as one of my earliest, images. But we moved all over the state with Dad. He was a camp lieutenant in a conservation camp, one of the fire camps down in Tulare County. It was up in the redwoods. And as a kid, it was very remote. I would just wander through the dorms during the day. Got my hair cut by the inmate barber, and like you said, the racing pigeons. They had a racing pigeon team at the camp, and I learned about how to raise the pigeons, and they'd take me in the coops and show me how to take care of the birds, and how they would train them and stuff like that. And they would pack the birds up, and staff would take them down in the valley, and they'd compete in various rallies and bird events, I guess. But I had a different upbringing with being in places that kids normally shouldn't be. And maybe that's bad parenting. I don't know, but whatever it was, I think it influenced me going forward in life.
I was going to ask you, so how did that impact your decision to become a crime writer?
It didn't so much influence immediately, because I never planned on being a fiction writer, crime writer. Didn't even occur to me until after I retired. I've always been a voracious reader. I'd read everything I could get my hands on, but it wasn't until after I retired that something just struck, and that something was I was sitting in the backyard reading a book with my morning retirement coffee. All is good with the world, and the book I was reading just wasn't very good. So I tossed it aside and said, well, I could do better than that. And it's like, well, could you? The little devil on your shoulder kind of thing said, could you really do that? So it kind of sent me down the path of learning what that was about and how to write crime fiction, and going to places like Book Passage, Mystery Writers Conference, and listening to craft workshops, and getting more and more engaged with what that whole environment and community was like. That kind of got me to be, where I'm now a crime fiction writer. The background I have, though, does help quite a bit, bringing that experience, and not so much the events, but those character voices. Some of them just never went away. And it's a very therapeutic way to get it out, and put it on the page.
But does the background kind of hurt in a way? Do you sometimes feel like so much that it's difficult to fictionalize a system that you know so much about?
It does sometimes. And I find that with a lot of cops that turn writer, the system inside out. I imagine that's the same with journalists who know how a newspaper works, and any intricate kind of organization. Real police work, real law enforcement, there's a lot of just boring stuff there that doesn't belong on the page in a fiction piece. And where I see a lot of cops stumbling is they'll come and write their novel like a police report, and that's how it sounds. And that's a big hurdle for cop writers to get over. And not everybody can do that, but I was very fortunate because I got, like I mentioned, really ingrained in the Book Passage and Mystery Writers community, and got that background and started to realize what story structure was and that kind of thing. But you're right, publishers don't have that background. So you'll present, I did one time an escape scene in a book. And the publisher just blew up that you can't have anybody escape from it's prison. They can't escape. It just can't happen. So
it does happen.
And this was just a simple walk away from like a camp setting. And it just can't happen. And pearls were clutched, and everything was going on. But so I had to rewrite the back half of the book with this really complicated tunnels and everything else just to make an escape scene more dramatic. So it does it gives you the tools, but you kind of know what you have to hold back and what the story really needs to go forward.
Yeah, yeah, that totally makes sense. Well, and I was going to ask you when you decided, but you said it was after retirement, right? When you
It
decided that
was.
you really wanted to do this?
Hmm. It was. Yeah, I didn't even think of it until after I retired, and I told you about throwing the book across the patio. I actually met that author at a BoucherCon some years later, and
Wow.
I thanked them for their inspiration to help me become a writer.
Wow.
Didn't say exactly how, but
I was going to
yeah,
say,
I
how
held
much of
that part
that
back.
story did you
So
tell?
yeah,
That's really funny.
see, I've gotten better now about holding stuff back. There was a time when that would have just come out, but yeah.
Well, I'm still working on it, so that's really encouraging. So let me read about the book. It's Illusion of Truth. It's book
Hmm.
3 of a Detective Emily Hunter mystery. Sacramento detective Emily Hunter is exposed to inhumanity on a daily basis. It's the unfortunate baggage that comes with police work, and she's mostly learned how to shoulder the load. But it all turns personal when her fellow cop and boyfriend, Brian Connor, is caught in the blast of a targeted church bombing. Brian is gravely injured, suffering a traumatic brain injury, but the attacks don't stop there. Soon, more officers come under fire, and Emily searches for a connection. She and her partner, Javier Medina, discover that Brian and the other injured officers share a common past. It's a past that now has them targeted for payback. Battling with heartbreak, Emily has to identify who's responsible for the string of attacks and stop them before there were more casualties. Will Brian ever be the same again? Already grappling with her mother's progressing Alzheimer's, Emily can't bear the thought of losing two of the people she loves the most. Though it feels impossible, Emily must stay focused on finding the criminals who uprooted her life and making sure that justice is served. So, do you have a favorite paragraph or part of the book that you'd like to read to us?
You know, I it's hard for me to pick a paragraph out. I mean, you and I had kind of talked about this piece of it, and it was kind of hard to do that. But there are a couple of lines I think that kind of set the stage for who Emily is and what she's about. I mean, in the previous two books, we introduce her, but yeah, she's very smart, very driven, very, she can be a little sarcastic, a little brash, but as a woman in law enforcement, she kind of has to do that to be noticed. But yeah, there are a couple of lines that kind of jump out at me if I can do that. This is right in the beginning of chapter 2 when she realized Brian has been caught up in this bombing. As a homicide detective, she knew evil wasn't born from darkness, but the shadows made the cowards who lurk there bold and brave. The darkness gave cover to the worst of us. Emily knew there was plenty to fear in the dark, and she knew this call was going to be another reminder of the fact. So that's kind of just leading up to what she is and where she's going. And then in that same section, she's getting ready to go to the hospital. She got dressed on autopilot while images of Brian and their last day together swirled in her mind. They'd arranged for time off and spirited off to Napa for the day. She'd found someone she could be herself with. No airs, no pretense, just comfortable with one another. He dared to think about a future. Dreams of the future had a nasty reputation for crushing your soul.
Wow.
And that's kind of sets up everything that happens from there on.
Totally, totally. Boy, that whole thing about dreams setting you up for the future and crushing the soul, that really hit me.
Oh, thanks.
So, I was telling you when we talked about this that it's funny that at first, the first few introductions with Emily, I didn't kind of like her too much. And then I thought, well, maybe she's too much like me. But I said, I don't know what that was about. But then I liked her a whole lot the more I read. So did you create her as an acquired taste, or did that just happen when you built the persona?
I think it kind of she does kind of grow on you. I mean, the first book, Face of Greed in the series, we introduce her, and all we know is she's a very driven, very smart, very competent detective, and her mom is also dealing with Alzheimer's. So she's got this two very heavy weights that she has to carry around. And coupled with being a woman in law enforcement, that's another burden, another hurdle that she has to overcome, because it's very tough for women in law enforcement to get ahead. I saw that during my career, and some of those characteristics of some of the successful women that I worked with they're kind of, living in Emily. So in River of Lies in book 2, we let her have a little personal life, and that's where Brian Connor, her boyfriend, comes together. So that relationship starts to burden, and we see version, and we see more and more of what she's like, in that kind of a relationship. And then she's feeling guilty about the time she's taking away from her mom with this relationship. So she's dealing with that daughter guilt that she carries around. So in book 3 now, An Illusion of Truth, we threaten to take both of those away from her, and her reaction to that is how we see her. But yeah, she's bold, she's very brash, she can be impulsive at times, and Javier Medina is kind of like her moral compass that kind of keeps her grounded in between the guide rails. But deep down, I think she's got a good heart, and she'd do anything for those around her. But yeah, she can be a pistol.
Well, like I said, after, not that far in, and that's when I said, oh, okay, I really like her. When I'm reading, I try to look for what's the thing that grabs me in every person's book. Here's something that happened to me while reading yours. It was like, I don't know, it's the page turner thing, but what was happening with that was every character introduced, I started assuming they could be a suspect. I don't know why and I don't usually jump to that when I'm reading, but every person, I found myself wired for it. I was like, oh yeah, he did it. And and then I'm building scenarios while I'm reading. And I thought, why did I do that? Did you know we do that when we read your book? I
did have a suspicion, and that's kind of how I built this one, is that, I introduced a lot of people, very plausible suspects.
Okay.
And then one by one, we find out, well, it couldn't have been him. It couldn't have been her. So yeah, it was fun to kind of play with that aspect of this book when I was plotting it, is, how these things intersect, and who's really a red herring and who's really the person we have to pay attention to.
Well, it was kind of fun. I mean, it was kind of like television. I mean, it just had boom, boom, boom. It had that pacing to it. So on the serious side, you hit the hot spots. I mean, defund police, racial tension, politics and policing. I mean, if it's a controversial issue, you dove right in. You wrote within those issues. Was that something you were concerned about, or did you just jump in?
I jumped in, but I did it, knowing how deep the water was. Because these are all issues that, I mean, we're writing books, like I was writing this 2.5 years ago, and couldn't imagine the tension that we're seeing now, and how much this is very, very similar to that. But I think a lot of us, when we write, our crime fiction is really a mirror of what's going on around us, and using that to kind of reflect back, and giving people a chance to kind of look at these issues and make up their own mind. I mean, I've done that with immigration and other novels, and homelessness in River of Lies. There's a lot going on under the surface that, once you kind of peel it back a little bit, you get a little different understanding. And yet, all the things you talked about, the defund police, the racial tension, I mean, it's very real. We see it, we live it, and you almost have to include that in what you're writing about if you're going to be honest and reflect what's going on out there.
That's a good point. It really is. So now we're at that point where we want to ask you for some words of wisdom.
Well, good evening, everybody. It's been nice.
Well, we'll start with the basics, and I always ask, pantser, plotter, which one and why?
Oh yeah, I'm a dyed-in-the-wool plotter. I gotta have a roadmap to know where I'm going. I mean, Claire and I have a lot of fun when we do events together, because we're totally opposite. We write very similar stuff, but we approach it in such different ways. She's an organic writer, I'm a plotter, and I need that roadmap to know where I'm going. It helps me not get caught up in things that I have to rewrite and pull back, and lost little avenues of despair. Yeah. But yeah, I need that roadmap to know where I'm going.
Well, tell us about your process. I mean, how much of a plotter are you? I mean, are you on a spreadsheet or what? What's your process?
Yeah, I'm not like a Jeffrey Deaver with a 140-page outline. But I just finished an outline for another book, and it's probably about 50 pages. And it was just highlight, chapter by chapter, what scenes I wanted to have in it, what the characters were going to be doing, and just kind of those major plot points as you move through the book. When I do that, I can kind of play with those things that we talked about those suspects that might not be the real thing. You can kind of know where to start feathering those in and where to pull them back a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that's how I like to approach it. It seems to be my comfort zone.
Got it. Does it ever stifle your muse, or does it stop you from having that thing that says, "Wait, go this way," or your characters maybe taking over and saying, "Nah, we don't want to do it that way." Do you still get that?
I still get that. Yeah, I still get
Okay.
that. So, yeah, some people think that if you're a plotter, you're dull, lifeless, and boring, and everything is, all plotted out in your life, and there's no surprises. Um, yeah, even though I plot it out, I'll allow for a little side trip. If I'm writing something, and River of Lies was a good example, there's a plot twist on a twist in the end of that came to me while I was writing that last couple of scenes. So it's like, okay, I know I plotted it this way, but if I came at that same point this way, and you just kind of change that scene a little bit. So I allow myself that kind of freedom.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely I'm give me the map and I'll get you there.
So since you've been on this journey, can you pull out maybe the most valuable lesson, something that you've learned that you think
Mhm.
just, was eye-opening and it really just helped you to move on?
Yeah, there are a lot of things that have kind of helped me in my process and over my writing career. Um, One was, I mean, I still to this day, in the middle of a novel, I suffer imposter syndrome like no other. This book is never going to get written. It's never going to get finished. I'm the worst thing that's ever been written. They're going to come and repossess my keyboard. But again, going back to Book Passage, there was a panel in this very small conference, and usually it's about 750 to 75 people. Was Michael Conley, Robert Craze, and Don Winslow in the room.
Yeah.
Conley talked about imposter syndrome and how it still plagues him.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, well, maybe if he's feeling that way, I'm doing something right. So it kind of helped me put an anchor to it and say, okay, I just have to trust the process. I just get this thing done, get the draft done. I know it's going to suck. All first drafts do. It's okay. And that's the second piece of it is, writing is rewriting. And that's where the fine tuning and the story really comes together is once that draft is done, I let it marinate in my desk for a couple of months if I can. And then when I pick it back up, it's with fresh eyes. And that's when the story just kind of gets more and more sharp.
That's really good to hear. I guess all of us have imposter syndrome. I mean, it's just such that voice that you wish you could kill in your head, and it just lives.
Well,
Well,
it shows that you care. It shows that you care what you're writing about.
oh,
If you didn't have any emotion tied to it, then you wouldn't care.
What's
You
the
just,
matter?
just,
yeah,
you draft it out and send it off and you're done.
no, that makes total sense. Well, so now we want to open up the floor and get some of these questions to you. Then Karen's going to toss these questions, right, Karen?
Yes. However, we only
However.
have one question
Uh-oh.
so far, and it's from Donna Del Oro, and she wants to know, did you find it difficult to write from a woman's point of view? Did you have to adjust your thinking, etc.?
Good question. Thanks for that, Donna. And yeah, writing as a man writing a woman's point of view,
What's
it's not
wrong?
something I take lightly. I
What's the
mean,
matter?
because I think we've all read examples of a man writing a woman that just it hits all the wrong notes, and you don't want to be that guy. So, I didn't want Emily to just be a man, character in a dress and just send her off on the page. She's much more nuanced than that. So I surround myself with smart women in my writing life. My first reader is my wife. My agent's a woman. My publisher's a woman. I have a beta reading group of female cops. So that kind of, thing looks at that. And none of them are shy at all about telling me, hey, a woman's not going to say this, or, this wouldn't happen this way. I mean, Emily is a very complicated, complex character, and her life isn't simple. None of our lives are simple. So you just want to kind of show that in her image as she hits on the page. And yeah, it's not something I take lightly, but I have a lot of help getting me there.
Karen, do you see Dober's question?
Yes. Okay. So, well, first of all, let's see. What's the favorite mystery you've ever read and why?
That I've ever read? Wow, that's a tough one. I don't know if I can narrow it down to just one. I mean, I think if there were different categories of books in certain areas, like my favorite science fiction would be, Ray Bradbury. Police procedural, I kind of go to Karen Slaughter, even over Michael Connelly. She just brings a little bit more character and nuance into the story. If I was going to go kind of fantasy-ish, I think Ellie Griffith's New Frozen People I thought was really, really good, because that involves time travel and and a mystery and an investigation, and there was really smartly done. But it's hard to narrow it down to one author or one title to me, because I read quite a bit, and I enjoy reading. I love when I know the authors, like our fellow Capital Crimes people, and I can pick up Claire's book and I can read about Hank Worth. I can hear her in that story, and that helps me kind of put that together too.
Okay, great. Lana wants to know, how much research have you done for the Emily Hunter series? How do you do your research?
It varies on the book. And some of it I've been lucky I've been able to use my background on. In River of Lies, we had large sections of it that were in homeless camps, in the city. When I was still working with the parole division for Department of Corrections, I would go down to Los Angeles quite a bit, and we would go through Skid Row, the largest, homeless camp in the nation. And we had parolees living there. So it was different challenges on how to supervise that population, how to keep them safe, and how to keep everybody else, under control. But it lets you observe what really went on in a homeless camp. And there's a structure and almost like a self-government that happens in these large camps where they have their own structure and their own leaders and that kind of thing. And it's really kind of unique from a sociological perspective to look at that. It's really kind of interesting. So as those things come up, those elements, I'll dive in and do research. I've had to talk to the Sacramento Fire Department, PIO, on fire issues. But in Illusion of Truth, there wasn't a lot extra I needed to do there. Some of the explosives issues that could be, because as Myra said, there be bombings here in this book. And the bombings are going after the cops. So mechanically how that happens, I wanted to get correct, but not too correct. I didn't want to give anybody an anarchist handbook on how to go out and do something. But so you kind of hold back some of that stuff.
But you had enough of the technology or the making, where it gave it the heft.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, thanks.
Chris wants to know, what encouraged you to write a female?
Yeah, another good question. I've written women point of view novels before, but this series seemed a little bit different because I wanted that for this character, the lead character in this series, I wanted that character to have an additional burden, additional hurdle to have to get over just to be on a level par with everyone else. And for Emily, that was just being a woman in a male dominated profession. I mean, I've seen women get, very, very roughly treated. The sexual harassment, the innuendo is sometimes off the charts. And Emily deals with that. And sometimes she'll turn it around on the people that, are the people that don't think a woman belongs in this profession and that kind of stuff. And she deals with that in Illusion of Truth a couple of times. But I wanted that additional complexity, I guess you could say, for that character, for Emily's character, to be one more thing that, we could draw on for her. Thanks, Chris.
Betsy wants to know, how do you write red herrings?
Yeah, they're kind of fun because you don't want to cheat the reader, but you want to kind of lead them along to lull them into a sense of, okay, like Myra said, oh, I know who did it. I know who did it. Oh my God, they didn't do it. It's like you want to lead them up to that point, but you can't cheat completely, because at the same time you're still laying those clues that when the reader goes back and thinks about it, it's like, oh yeah, that one was there all along. I just didn't see it. So you kind of put it out there, but you hold it back just a little bit and don't make it too obvious.
Okay, great. And not an actual teacher's pet wants to know, since you're a diehard plotter, James, do you have an example of a red herring you just couldn't make work?
Oh, I'm sure there have been. Trying to think of one off the top. I think there was a book, I'm trying to think, it might have been Black Label. Black Label was a pharmaceutical thriller, psychological thriller. And again, it was a female protagonist. She was a corporate executive. And there was a part of the book that dealt with the Mexican mafia owning pharmaceutical contracts. I'm not giving too much away from the book, but there was another element that I was going to try to weave in there to lead it back to, prison and, overcrowding and people getting out and that kind of thing. And it just wouldn't work. And it felt like I was just forcing a square peg into a round hole. So I had to kind of drop that line and just move over to something else. And it actually, as soon as I made that decision, it made perfect sense, because I remembered that, when I was working, the Mexican mafia actually infiltrated the Department of General Services and was controlling contracts, community contracts, and they were using that to launder their crime and drug money. So it just kind of like, oh yeah, there it is.
Great. Lana has another question. How do you navigate roadblocks in your writing process?
Roadblocks. Yeah. Well, I posted this morning on Facebook that I had a furry writer's block on my desk. Emma was laid all over my keyboard. I couldn't even reach it. So she wanted to just take a nap for a while. If there's a scene I'm stuck on, I don't believe in writer's block. If there's a scene that's not working, or a problem that it's just not flowing, I'll do a couple of different things. One is I'll get up and do something physical. I'll go walk the dogs, and I call them the plot hounds for that reason. I'll take them out and we'll just kind of get that plot, going over and over in our heads while we're walking. And, they'll know the answer before I do. And then we'll get back and then we'll rewrite it. Or, and this just blows the minds of my organic writer friends. If I'm stuck on that scene, I'll write the end of the book. I know how it's going to end because I'm a plotter. So I'll write the end of the book the way I know it to be. And by doing that, it usually uncovers something that I needed to have in that scene that I was struggling with. So I'll know what that clue or character or issue was in the ending of the book, and I can put it in that scene that I'm struggling with. And it kind of helps me kind of weave everything together that way.
Great. Okay, Patty wants to know, do you worry too much about getting the details absolutely identical to reality, Or are you willing to invent details that might break the rules but make the story better?
Oh, that's a great question, because I think we see a lot of novels that the writers are just so happy and so proud of all the research they've done and how accurate it is. They want to make sure it all gets tossed into the book, and it just slows down the story. So you're exactly right. Sometimes the processes aren't going to be exactly right, or you're going to have to kind of, tease them back a little bit. An example that when people ask this question is, the television show Reacher. Great show. I loved it. The character, I think in like the second episode, he's being searched by this little skeevy correctional officer in this backwater jail. And the correctional officers tell him, we're going to strip search you. And, we're going to, see if you're carrying any weapons or anything like that. And Reacher just goes on this eloquent little tirade for about a minute saying, you have no nexus to the crime to search me. And the Supreme Court says, you can't search for unrelated. And he just went on and on and on. Couple of things. One, it was perfect character development for that character, for Reacher, because that was the first time we ever heard him say more than two syllables at the same time. But in reality, it was totally wrong. The Supreme Court said actually just the opposite, in a real court case. If that happened in real life, we'd get 6 of our biggest guys would hold him down and would search him. But for that character, it made perfect sense. So when you're writing crime fiction, it's okay to not be accurate. You want to get the story moving forward. You want to tell your story. And sometimes that means you're going to do some shortcuts, and just know that you're doing that. And so that if anybody says, well, you didn't double lock those handcuffs or whatever it is, it's like, okay, yeah, you're right. I didn't. I needed to take a shortcut, but it's okay to do that.
Reality can be so boring. I sat through murder trials that,
Yep.
You'd have to try to keep yourself awake. They go on for days and days and weeks. Nobody would want to watch that on television.
No, exactly that.
Yeah.
Real police procedure would bore the bark off a tree. So you got to kind of peel out that back just to get to your story and just tell that story.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay, Dover wants to know, if you're not a famous author like Jim Litwell, how do you get interviews with people like the fire chief, for example, when you're doing research without them thinking you're a nutter? She wants to know any tips or tricks.
Like let's use the fire department, for example, Sacramento Fire Department, larger metropolitan department. Those departments have a public information officer. That's usually a captain or a lieutenant. Their job is to liaison with the community. They want to talk to writers. They're willing to spend time to help you get things right. So they want the department to come off on a good note. So they want to make sure they're giving you all the positive things that the department does. I needed them because I needed to find out the name of specific apparatus and the types of hoses and that kind of stuff that piece of equipment would have. They're more than willing to do that. You don't have to be a big name writer or anything like that. Just introduce yourself, say, hey, I'm Dover, I'm an author, I'm writing about the fire department, and could you help me figure out X, Y, and Z? Because I want to get it right and show you guys in a good light. As long as you come at it with that, they will 9 times out of 10 give you exactly what you're looking for, if not more. Police departments are the same thing. They have a public information officer. They'll be willing to help too.
Okay, great. Donna has another question. Do you feel humor is useful or necessary in crime fiction in order to achieve balance between dark and light?
It can be if it's used effectively. If it's over the top, it kind of gets away from the story a little bit. I mean, in real cop interaction, there's a lot of dark humor. Cops use a lot of dark humor, and a part of it is a survival mechanism just to kind of diffuse everything that's going around. But yeah, in Illusion of Truth, Javier and Emily have some banter that goes back and forth, and there's some dark humor there. It's almost like a brother and sister kind of, picking at each other a little bit. But yeah, if you're going to write a humor novel, write a humor novel, and don't try to come at it through a police procedural with people dying and sexual assault and that kind of thing, and then belittle it a little bit with some humor thrown on top. You got to be true to you. So write what you write and stay in that lane.
Great. That's all the questions we have in the chat.
Does anybody else have anything they want to ask or say in discussion? I mean, this has been really enlightening. I mean, because everyone approaches, I mean, there are somewhat similar approaches, but everybody has kind of their thing, their way of doing this.
Yep.
And that's so great to hear.
That's one of the things I really appreciated is there's no one right answer, and if you're looking at classes online or whatever, and people say this is the only way it's done, this is the way it has to be, move on, because there is 100 different ways to get to that end of that book, and you have to find the method that works for you.
We just got 2 more questions. Do you want them?
Sure.
Okay. Chris wants to know, are you thinking about a new series?
Yeah, I am thinking about a new series. I'm doing some revisions now to get back to my agent on a new series. It's kind of Jack Reacher meets Prison Break, and it's set in a fictional Bodega Bay, where a guy comes home after spending 15 years in prison for a murder he didn't commit, and tries to find out, what really happened. And bad things start to happen.
Okay, that sounds exciting. The other question, we've just got another one popped in. Another question was, ever written a story with one POV, which is the criminals?
I don't think I have. No, I don't think I've written it from the criminal's point of view.
Wow.
No, I haven't.
That's
okay.
interesting.
Oh, go ahead, Myra.
No, I was going to say, I'm showing my age. That kind of gives me that whole fugitive vibe, but that's interesting.
Dover wants to know, do you find that sometimes it's hard coming up with new ways to murder people?
Dover, if you ever have trouble figuring out how to murder people, number one, let me know and I'll call 911 for you. But read a cozy mystery. Okay, those people, those authors, those cozy authors are more creative.
Yes,
they have more creative ways of killing people. I asked that question on a panel one time. What's the most creative way it was at Thriller Fest a couple of years ago. What was the most creative way you had of killing someone? The cozy writer had this list of, hanging them with Christmas lights to, all kinds of things. Rabid bats was another one. I mean, it just went on and on and on. These people are smart. So yeah, there's no end to how you can end your characters.
Patty wants to know about the pathway to getting your first book published. How tough was it?
Yeah, the first couple books are tough. I mean, everybody says you work on your first book for like 3 or 4 years, 4 or 5 years, and then it's published, and then you have a publishing contract that wants you to do the next one in a year. So it's that process. My first one was a human trafficking thriller set in Jamaica, and that was kind of somewhat based on a guy that I had in prison at Folsom who kidnapped a young woman, and he and his wife held her in a box under their bed as a slave. So it roughly based on that, but that one took me probably 2 to 3 years to write. And I had written 2 practice novels before that are still sitting in my bottom drawer that'll never see the light of day. But part of it is just putting in the words and getting that process down and just sitting down in the chair and getting your hours in. They say like a million words or a million hours or something like that. But there's some truth to that. The more you do it, the more confident you feel about it.
And what was your query process? Did you have a system for that, or how did you go about it?
Yeah, I mean it was pretty standard. I sent queries out and got my stack of rejections like everybody does. It's kind of like your badge of honor. Like, okay, you've earned your place in this society. But I actually got my agent at Book Passage at the Mystery Writers Conference when I heard her talk at a on an agents panel, and I said, I kind of like the way she's talking about author relationships and what she looks for and that kind of thing. So I approached her, over a bookshelf, and she said, "Hey, what are you working on?" And I had my elevator pitch handy, and I gave it to her, and she said, "Oh, okay, send it to me." So sent it to her, and a couple months later, we agreed to rep it, and then 2 months after that, she got me a two book deal with a New York publisher. So it just a lot of it's timing, a lot of it's luck, but the querying process can be, I mean, we could spend a whole other hour just talking about the querying process. Um, what you need in that query and what you need to leave out of that query, so that you sound like you're a confident writer, you know what you're doing, and that's somebody that this agent can work with.
Wow.
Great. Larry has a question. What would be a good resource for learning about a criminal leaving prison and readjusting in society?
Yeah, let's see. Well, when this book is published that my agent has right now, that'll be the one that'll be your resource. Actually, I'm trying to think if there's one specific book that deals with reentry, because it's a weird place for convicts to be. One of the things I've noticed in prison, that especially with men doing a lot of time, that when they come in the gate and they're looking at 30 years, 40 years, time stops for them. I mean, nothing happens in the outside world in their minds. I had guys that had never seen a color television, had never seen a cell phone, didn't know anything about the internet. And then they are let loose in this world where all those things are, a given. That's a hard adjustment to make. I did some consulting with Disney on a couple of movies that they were doing on a guy coming back home, and those are some of the things that we talked about, like that sense of control that they didn't have in prison is now expected of them. They didn't know they had to turn off the lights when they went to bed at night because that had been done for them for the last 10 years. Just little things like that make a difference in their life. And if you're writing about that, or putting a film together with that in it, that's a very visual and kind of emotional moment. One of the things I've done in another book is a guy moves into a large apartment. He gathers all of his stuff together, and his mattress, his bed, and his table are all in an 8x10 square, because that's what he's used to living in. So that's his place where he's comfortable. So it's hard to know where else to point someone to with those kind of reentry things, but it's a culture shock.
Thank you. Patty wants to know, isn't there a nonprofit that helps former incarcerated readjust?
Well, there's a number of them. And you know what? I just had a thought. John Lindstrom has a book that's just coming out, Hollywood Payback. And his guy is just coming out of prison, going back to LA. And he goes through some of that stuff. So I'd look for Hollywood Payback. It comes out in April. And it's really, really well written. But that kind of can give you a little bit of insight into going back home and relationships that have been broken, and now you're trying to see what works anymore for doing that. There are a lot of nonprofit groups, and you just have to be careful which one you hook up with. But some of them are really good about trying to get people together. Prison Industries Authority does a lot of work getting people placed out in the community after they get out, and with in the trade unions and that kind of thing. So there are resources.
Great. That's all we have in the chat.
That's pretty good. Anyone else have something they want to add or ask? Let's see.
I do. Thanks to Jim and Myra and Rick and Karen. I enjoyed this very much and I learned a lot.
Oh, thank you, Donna.
So, thank you and good night.
Okay, I'm going to put everyone back on the screen if that's okay. So I'm going to remove the spotlight from Jim and from where's yours there, Myra? Oh, you're going to be
Where's my what?
your spotlight. I can't get you. Oh, there it is, right there. Okay, there we go. We're all online now. Hey, Jim, thanks very much. You saw a copy of the book, and if you're in the area of El Dorado Hills on Sunday, Jim has our writers' coffee shop at Facing the Book at 2:00.
1:00.
Oh, geez, I'm always late. And it's a good opportunity to buy the book and get it signed right there. So, yeah. And I want to mention just a couple other things. On March 1st, our Meet the Author will be with Claire M. Johnson and City License. She's also one of the nominees for Stork's Lefty at Left Coast Crime. So, boy, how about that? 3 in a row. All of them are Lefty nominees. Man, someday I'll write a book. And let's see, one other thing I wanted to get out is, again, if you have a question for Terrence Dwyer, please send it to our email, and we'll compile those, and he'll go through those on our meeting on the 21st. So, Jim, thanks again. It was wonderful. Your books are great. I have them all. In fact, I have a couple of all of them, don't I?
You're the one. Yeah, you're the one that bought them. Thank you.
Boys, boy, I'll have them too. So, if anyone has any other questions or want to bring anything up,
Just real quick, if you're going to Left Coast Crime, Claire and I are doing a author connection together at Whack Donuts on Friday, I think, Friday morning at 9:20. So sign up for that. It's a ticketed event, but it's free, and you can come and spend some time and have some coffee with Claire and I, and we can look at some donuts.
hey, on that note, we were just talking yesterday about meeting up at is it the Sens bar, lobby bar? Chris?
Eclipse.
Eclipse?
Yeah, it's in the lobby.
Yeah, and on Thursday after the session, and for kind of a capital crimes, and we're going to get little stickers or little round dots that we put on our name tag so we can identify different capital criminals going around the area. So, yeah. And actually, we probably ought to have, well, no, next time we'll do that. But anyhow, that's about it. I thank everybody for coming. And Jim, I think we had 35 today. That's pretty good.
That's great. No, thanks.
That's
Thanks so
excellent.
much for having me here, and I really appreciate it. And it's always good to see you people.
Yeah. And
Thanks,
we'll
Jim.
hope somebody is Sunday.
Yeah, true.
All right.
All right.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.